I tell everybody, start with the numbers. Don't fall in love with the idea, the concept, my chapstick idea, right? It's ultimately get clear on the economics, right? And again, now with AI at your fingertips, you don't have to be a whiz in Excel to do it. But people so often, they just want the numbers to work because they love the concept or the idea. It's just put a pencil to it.
Welcome to Do Small Business Like a Big Boss, where we explore the real stories, hard-earned lessons, and game-changing strategies of entrepreneurs who've moved beyond the side hustle and built businesses that scale with confidence. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Aisha Jorge Massengill, your small business legal guide. Let's dive in. Hey bosses, welcome to the latest edition of Do Small Business Like a Big Boss. I am your host, Aisha Jorge Massengill, your small business legal guide. And today I'm excited to welcome Brad Stevens to the show. Brad is currently the founder and CEO of Outsource Access and a number of other organizations that he's going to tell us about in a little bit. It's an offshore virtual services firm that he's grown to 500 plus employees in just about 4.5 years, with the target of doubling that in the near future. In 2021, Outsource Access was the only outsourcing company to receive the Inc. magazine's Best in Business Award for firms making the biggest impact on their communities, industries, and the environment. Welcome, Brad.
Oh, thank you so much. I was mid-coffee to get my energy dialed in to bring the heat here. But
Bring the heat.
no, super excited to be here, and congrats on the podcast and the success and the message you're getting out there. There's never enough support out there for small to medium business folks that are willing to play in the game and try and grow something.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing thing to be a part of growing something organically, and going through all the struggles, which is a lot of what the show is about. It is about exposing those pieces of the business. Like people always say, don't look at someone else's story mid-story and compare it to yours, because it can be very discouraging if you do that. So one of the things that you shared and talked about a little bit was some of your early grind and going to school at Harvard and having to come back home. Can you tell the folks a little bit about your origin story?
Oh, sure. No, it's every entrepreneur's got their lemonade stand, kind of a journey, and for me, yeah, I'm from Atlanta area, which you and I were talking about. I have some folks in common there. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial type of family, and my lemonade stand was actually in third or fourth grade. But anybody that's a little bit older here remembers micro machines, the tiny little toys that kids had, and I asked for them for all my Christmas and birthday, and loved them, and ended up starting a micro machine rental business in fourth grade, and so that was
Oh,
my
wow.
first business. I had like 600 micro machines. I went to this little Christian school, and I carried them in purple Crown Royal bags. Funny enough, my parents enjoyed some Crown Royal, and for some reason, those bags, I loved them, and they were nice and soft and fuzzy. Masked up all my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur and involved with the kind of the family business, and so he'd drive me to school about 20 minutes every day, and I guess I would ask him a lot of questions about it, and I decided that was what I was going to do. And my mom still has a folder. I had a newsletter I wrote dated 1989 on there, and I made myself my own credit card and frequent shopper cards. I remember Winter Hawkins. I still remember she was my VP of sales, and so that was my early journey of renting micro machines for a penny a night to my friends in third, fourth grade. And I had a tutoring company in high school as well. And kind of continuing just to find ways of, loved creating and innovating. And I'd go to all the middle school counselors and figure out which kids were struggling with math or trying to skip a math grade. And that was a pretty strength of mine. And they'd give me all the materials. And I just, parents would call me and they get $20 an hour back in like 1990, 7, 98.
Wow.
So that was kind of my beginning origins of it. And yeah, I went to college, went to Harvard, and then finished up down at Wharton Business School for my undergrad. And yeah, I had some crazy family things, kind of going on, and on the family business side of things, and a lot of people have navigated ups and downs. And I had two little sisters, so I ended up kind of coming back home for a semester and helping out and supporting with the family and helping to sort of regroup, and got a chance to accelerate my emotional intelligence at an early age. And my two little sisters that you never waste a good crisis of things you're navigating. It set a foundation of resilience and having to navigate some challenging life things at an earlier age that I'd never tried. And so that was kind of a initial challenge navigated in college, but finished graduating, and was actually going to work for an investment bank here in Atlanta to kind of make some money and pay off some school loans. And they ended up going under right before I was supposed to start. And so about 2 weeks before I was supposed to start for this investment bank in Atlanta, and already had an apartment picked out with another guy. We were both going to be living in Buckhead, and yeah, they ended up going under in the technology space, and so I had some other offers. But that was a big fork in the road for me. I could either take some other offers I had with some other companies, or go ahead and start my entrepreneurial career. And so I took that second path and tucked my tail, moved back in with my parents down in Fayette County, and I started my first business, actually, with my great uncle in the pharmaceutical space. And so since then, it's been a string of companies over the last 25 plus years, living in the entrepreneurial world for better or worse. Has its pros and cons for sure.
So one of the things that you talked about, and it sounds like you were able to identify it at a really young age, is solving a problem that people have in the marketplace. Is that just something that comes to you instinctively, or how did you develop that muscle? Because it seems like it's evolved into your current businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, most all males all the time are always trying to solve everybody's problems, right? As my spouse tells me all the time, right? Don't solve my problems, just listen, right?
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of your entrepreneurs are creative problem solving. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about, where you gotta fall in love with people's challenges, and at the beginning of micro machines, I think it was kind of the opposite. I loved micro machines, and that's the thing I loved, and so everybody else should love them too. And so I got lucky. I had some friends, that were able to rent them from me. But as things have moved along, yeah, like with the tutoring deal I did in high school, and after that, it's identifying where is there a challenge, and just be scanning the environment all the time. What are the pain points people are navigating, and then, can I provide a unique I was on a big webinar yesterday with it. He was talking about your unique advantage point relative to others. So it can be macro big challenges to and helping low income people qualify for free medication, which is actually my first company I did with my great uncle after college, and realizing low income individuals were struggling. There's patient assistance programs that existed to get free medication from drug companies, but most people didn't know they existed. And then the doctors were not willing to do a lot of the paperwork sometimes because it was super burdensome. So we, launched a business with doctors who were willing to do that, and partner with a software company that would facilitate that process. Senior citizens that were paying $700-800 a month for their meds, you were able to get for free just by creating access to that solution and just charging a small fee for processing the paperwork. So it's looking for big problems all the way down to, like, somehow my chapstick keeps making it into the dryer all the time, and my wife yells at me because it melts all over my pants. I know other people that are addicted to chapstick have the same problem, my little sisters
Yes.
included. So I'm in the middle of ChatGPT identifying a product that I can use to scan the unique wax and chapstick that goes over laundry before it goes in to avoid that problem. So always
That's
scanning
hysterical.
for pain points.
That's hysterical. Now, but you talked about you come from an entrepreneurial background. You had this small window of time where you were going to work for the investment banking firm, but then you went back to entrepreneurial life. What is the moment that you realize that the entrepreneurship path is the way for you?
Well, for me, I mean, I was fortunate to have some early programming around that, and I think a lot of times people end up being a product of their parenting environment, a number of times. And so for me, because I kind of grew up and saw that around. I saw sort of it go really well, and I also saw the downside of it. But, like I said, my dad driving me to school every morning, second, third, fourth grade, and I would just ask questions, and he'd talk about business. So that became the subject matter I learned about. My dad was a doctor. I probably may have learned more about that path, but early on, I think, predisposed, I think, maybe for some of the skill sets related to it, being detail oriented and quite a bit ADHD, like most of us crazy entrepreneurs are. But then, just bringing people together. And like I said, even I can still remember to this day, and bringing people together on the little toy rental business. And actually another thing I got a chance to do in high school was that tutoring business, but also we had a chance to, for one of our classes and our, it was my junior, senior year, high school down in Peachtree City, we got a chance to start a company, an international trading business with another school in Scotland. And we literally had to come together and raise funds. We had to get shareholders, which were our parents. We had to hold a big golf tournament to raise money to start the company, to buy products. Funny, it was actually Beanie Babies back in the day. People in Scotland loved Beanie Babies. That was back in the Beanie Baby craze in 97, 98. So we shipped them over, and they would sell them. And then we imported some unique Scottish jewelry from them that they found locally, and we found a way to sell it locally. I think for me, that was one of the crystallizing points, and that was a really unique class experience to truly, bring it all together. And the international nature of it was cool. And I got a chance to actually travel around the state, and got a chance to fly and present in London to some banks there who were helping fund this program for their schools. So that was a really unique experience. I think that it got me excited about it. And so, yeah, that kind of kicked off, and I knew I would probably go down the path. I was going to do the investment banking thing to sort of make some good cash and pay down some student loans. But, life threw that fork, and rightly so. And I'm glad it did. I may not have ultimately, I may have ended up getting stuck to the investment banking money and path, which it can be pretty addictive in terms of some of that path, but it was a forcing function. As one of my favorite authors, Benjamin Hardy, talks about. Sometimes you got to have forcing functions in life that drive you down a path. And so I think that's kind of where it started, and then just kind of off to the races, since then, and definitely had some ups and downs through my entrepreneurial journey, leading to having a company of 500 employees on the other side of the world that I never would have anticipated. But one thing led to another through the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of people may not appreciate. I've lived in the Atlanta area for a couple, 3 years, that I find, at least where I was in the circles that I was in, that there was a greater entrepreneurial spirit, that people were not as wed to like the big corporations. I'm from New York, I'm from the Northeast. So it's much more common. Like you go to school, you get the big company job or the big law firm job, and you do that. Whereas the people that I encountered in Conyers and Covington and Atlanta, were much more like they were small business owners. They had their own thing. And I think when you see it, like you said, when something's right in front of you and you see it, it's normalized. So, with that being said, did you feel any fear as you started to travel on this entrepreneurial journey about starting things and growing different companies?
Well, I mean, when you're in your 20s, right, and you're not married, don't have children yet, you got plenty of risk that you can kind of throw out there. I was fortunate to be in this journey, early, and so I could be pretty risky, and kind of reinvest everything back in my initial stages. So I think, and there was certainly some fear about would it be successful or not, but I think it inspired me to believe in myself. And I think the things that I navigated, as I mentioned, early in my life, with family dynamics, and I have an amazing family, and lots of wonderful things, and also had those challenges. But and my little sisters, would tell you today as well. I mean, they are wildly successful, and have always been told that they've got maturity beyond their years. And I think a lot of it has to do of going through some pretty dynamic things at a younger age and being resilient, through that. And so I think that's been a big part that helped give me confidence. If I can make it through that, right, and kind of navigate, that I could kind of make through the other side. And I think that's for better or worse, it's a crazy sentiment that most entrepreneurs have, is they know they can get through anything, right? I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to keep moving the peg around, and I'll figure out, find a way to win. Failure is not an option, as the Apollo 13 goes.
Yeah. I'm just curious because I actually get asked this question a lot, having also come from some pretty challenging background circumstances in the Bronx, about resilience.
I can imagine.
If you had to give advice about how to build resilience, is there something that you could help folks anchor to how they can build that muscle? Because I don't always know how to explain it to folks. But I just know that I have it, right? But my kids may not have it on the same level that I would like them to, right? So for you,
Sure.
how would you give folks advice or guidance about how to build that muscle of overcoming adversity and still pushing through?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different factors, right? It's sort of one of those nature or nurture questions in some cases, right? In terms of, is it something that people naturally have built in? Just like kind of like the question of leadership as well. And, for me, I think, observing, entrepreneurial ups and downs, kind of growing up, that environment, definitely seeing it modeled for me of resilience, kind of early on, and what, my parents instilled in me, throughout my youth. And I was fortunate. I mean, crazy enough, all of my great grandparents were alive until I was 18.
Wow.
So my, my parents got cracking early, had me at like 19, 20 years old. And so I was fortunate enough to have a lot of just, really positive influences of hard work and discipline around me and family that showed up for things, around me. So I think that, you know, subconsciously, had an impact for me. And when things kind of went sideways on the family business side of things and just seeing both my mom and my dad, and they're willing what they had to do. They did what they had to do, right, to get
Mhm.
through. There was no give up. There was no right. It's just you got to do, and you got to hunker down, and so it sort of became an unspoken core value, I think, that was established, early on, of having that around me, so that I could observe it and see it around me, and I'd say for those that maybe don't have the family that around them in that capacity. And this is something I didn't, learn to my early 30s, as we were talking about earlier, is you can create your own circle of influence. Like Jim Collins talks about, having the board. John Maxwell talks a lot about it. But I joined an organization called EO Entrepreneurs Organization, in my early 30s, and it's a people, fellow crazy nut entrepreneurs like yourself that you don't. Sometimes you can't find that connection in family or friends that understand what it's like to max out credit cards to make payroll. And
Mhm.
so being in that group, I started meeting, and so now I've done, I calculate like 800 hours for the last 15 years with my entrepreneurs organization group. It's a mastermind group. And for 4 hours every single month for 15 years, I have met with 7, 8 other people that we have an agenda driven meeting, and we, present on what we're navigating across personal, family, and business. And so that's a more formal organization. There's tons of great organizations out there. I'm a part of YPO now as well. Once we kind of grew and got to our side, you know, don't go at it alone, right? Resilience on your own, and even the most driven, disciplined individuals, if you're living it on your own, it's a tough place to be, and tough to make it through. But try and find yourself. And now with all the different access people have with social and social groups and otherwise, surround yourself with the right kind of people. They're there to lift you up, and you're on the journey together.
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with a decision that I'm going to drive for the outcome that I desire despite the circumstance. So it is, I had to have a conversation with one of my siblings once, and I said, listen, we got dealt a bad hand, but like that only works for so long as your excuse. At some point you make the decision to go forward, and for me sometimes it's like different grounding activities, like whether it be working out or reading or cleaning my kitchen. I always joke, I give advice for a living, and then I send people off and I never know, did it work, did it not work? I guess if it really blows up nasty they come back and they blame me, but when I clean my kitchen, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and I can see like the fruits of my labor. And sometimes if I'm struggling, like I go back to the grounding activity to make me say, like, hey, this is something I completed. Or at the end of a day, I'm like, there's one more thing I want to get done so I can feel like I accomplished it and I can close the book on the day. So it's like making that decision that, my outcome is going to be better than the circumstance, and then finding that grounding activity that keeps you centered, whatever that is for you, I think helps drive and propel you forward. That's just one lady's thoughts about it. All right. Let's talk about outsource access. I want to hear, because just looking at your site and reading up on you, it seemed like it was born out of a pretty difficult circumstance with another business that was happening, and you ultimately pivoted to solving this problem with overseas labor. So how did you tell us the story about how you came to outsource access?
Sure. I mean, it's like a lot of entrepreneurial journeys. Kind of one thing stumbled across another, and there's no. So one of my favorite things about Jim Collins, one of his concepts is, this concept of return on luck, right? When he studies a lot of the companies over time, and a lot of people don't realize, if you go to jimcollins.com and you click on concepts, he actually has this thing called the map, which takes all the best practices for all his 7 books and puts it into this one tight framework. In his book Good to Great, studying people over time and all these companies over 40 years, independent of industry, independent of economic environment, right? Nobody had necessarily, good luck or bad luck, right? It's just being positioned and proactive when those things happen, so that you can take advantage of your circumstances, whether it's good or bad, right? People that were positioned in certain ways when COVID hit, right? Were able to, was COVID good luck or bad luck, right? For some, bad, some good, depending on how you're positioned. But yeah, for me, We were talking about, I got my book kind of releasing in a couple of months here and called Automate and Delegate. And everybody that knows me, that's sort of always been a theme. I'm always about, when I was asking ChatGPT about themes of my blog and book and so forth, it's like maximizing human potential, right? It's sort of what I've always pursued myself and others, and certainly fall short, but try. So each of my businesses, along the way, my first company in the pharmaceutical space, and then ended up leading to another company in the nutritional product space, um, and then from that, ended up starting a business in the teeth whitening space. And believe it or not, there's actually a logical link between all of those. So my last company, were manufacturing distributed teeth whitening products globally for the dental industry and the beauty industry. We had professional whitening systems that we sold, and then lower strengths ones that spas or salons could offer, and then retail products. And one of our products that we had was a retail product. It was called our Chick Flick pen. It was a little double-sided pen. It was red in the middle, bright, shiny red. It had a little switch in it, had LED lights, and on one side it had lip gloss. It was actually lip gloss, lip plumper, and then the other side was teeth whitening gel that you could brush on your teeth, and then lips to kind of brighten them up. And it was one of our many products we sold, but it had kind of a runaway success. Women loved it, whitening their teeth, their lips, and also the little mini LED lights in it kind of served as like a little flashlight. And we had a lot of success with this, even outside of our dental offices. And actually, we had a celebrity that was on the cover of Us Weekly magazine holding this pen. And during the journey of the teeth whitening business, I got a chance to learn a lot about manufacturing and production, and I worked with manufacturers globally across Europe and Asia to get the products manufactured, the packaging, deal with FDA for labeling and all those things. And there's a manufacturer in Taiwan that we were using to make this product, fully certified. And again, this is a lesson to all entrepreneurs out there. You can do your best effort on choosing vendors. They were ISO certified and so forth, and they produce products from the top cosmetic manufacturers in the world. After which produced a lot of this product with them, but the next batch that they had shipped us, one of the suppliers changed the bioadhesive glue that held the brush on the end that the teeth whitening gel side goes into, right? And it's hydrogen peroxide in teeth whitening gel. And so, we always told the manufacturer, like, look, if you change anything in this, you have to let us know because we have to test it with the hydrogen peroxide. Well, one of the suppliers of that glue changed it, didn't tell us, and they would manufacture the pen, fill the lip gloss side, then ship it to our whitening gel manufacturer in California that would fill the whitening gel portion, package it up, ship it out to customers. And it wouldn't happen immediately, but because of that change, and they didn't tell us, after about 30 days, it would start building up gas. And then they would crack or almost explode. So basically, we sent, several thousand, 10,000 plus little mini grenades globally. And we were selling about 18 countries at that point. And that was the batch that we sent to all the beauty bloggers and everyone, because this is going to be a really maybe successful product on its own. And it was a disaster. Oozing in people's purses. It was cracking all over the place. And it was at that time that a friend of mine, actually a husband of one of my wife's friends, we went to dinner and he told me about, this offshore website he was using called Elance, where you could find people offshore to do things lower cost. And my cash was hemorrhaging at that point. And so I learned about Elance and Odesk, which now became Upwork and Fiverr. And I just basically learned about the whole global work environment and where you can find people and what they're capable of and what they could do and how cost effective it was. And it's what helped me save that company. I went back to my team. I'm like, hey, we're going to dive into this whole world rapidly and we're going to make our dollars stretch so we can get on the other side of it, and help me save that business. And so we ended up selling that business to our manufacturer. And so I had this knowledge base now of like how to find offshore talent. This was about 10 years ago. Where can you find them? What are they capable of? It's kind of like a lot of how AI is today, right? We know it exists, but the creativity of how do you use them? And so I got asked to speak for tons of organizations globally on this. And I developed a 3-hour workshop called Redefining How You Scale with Offshore Talent. And I would share examples. And I kept getting encouraged actually by my forum, my EO group I'm in, like, Brad, why don't you launch your own company? And so based on that encouragement, I got a chance to do that. And so in 2019, we launched Outsource Access, and with a full commitment to like make offshore talent, accessible and sustainable for small to medium business. And as you know, we're talking about everything from law firms to manufacturers to marketing agencies, 85 different industries that we serve. And I chose the Philippines. A lot of people maybe listening, they kind of group all of Southeast Asia together and so forth. But the Philippines was controlled by the United States until, around 1950 or so, 1947. So it's completely Americanized, completely English speaking. And a lot of people who've gotten customer service, you speak with people in the Philippines. But there's a whole other level of higher talent folks there as well. And the very first girl I hired off a job board in the Philippines at 22 years old, she had never worked for anybody except for one other employer. She became my chief operating officer over 500 people in 4.5 years. And it just showed me the level. And then we hired another and another and another, and realized if you attract the right people, you treat them well, you compensate them well. We have our own magazine in the Philippines. We have our own kind of a YouTube TV show. We celebrate our employees, that you can create a really great experience, to attract the right talent that then translates into an amazing experience for our clients.
So one thing that I'm intrigued by is the breadth of the industries that you serve, because anyone else will say the riches are in the niches. I have a business that's also kind of industry agnostic, right? Where I exist where people run businesses and have people problems or contract problems. What was part of your calculus for serving such a broad spectrum of skills and industries in your business?
Well, for us, it was honestly, as I mentioned, I launched this company in 2019, right before COVID, and we, because of all the speaking and thought leadership that I'd done, and that's a whole nother topic I would highly recommend to everybody out there. Um, that made a huge difference with the following and engagement. Once I decided to launch, I mean, we had a pretty good following because everybody kept asking me to, you know, start my own operation. So we were around 80 or 90 people by the end of 2019. But then COVID hit, right? And I saw it wipe out certain industries, right? I mean, funny enough, I got a chance to speak at a global real estate conference in DC in 2019. And we actually still service a lot of people in commercial and residential real estate. But, what happened in that capacity during COVID, right? People couldn't tour buildings and so forth. So, we chose to basically just provide a very high quality experience. I got fully incorporated in the Philippines. We hire everybody's full time employees. We pay their health insurance. We pay their benefits. We take really good care of our teams. I got a chance to speak at the United Nations headquarters and learn about the Sustainable Development Goals. And so every quarter we survey our employees in the Philippines and ask what do they want us to invest in their community. We want to show we care about their country. When I was there last, we actually helped fund a building for 200 children with pediatric cancer. That was a big focus area for our employees. So it was about writing the right talent and bringing them to the table. And if you do that right, frankly, any business has got constraints. And as you and I were talking about at the beginning, it's funny to see across 85 industries. It doesn't matter industry, right? It may vary the type of work that we're doing in some cases. Like I shared, we're working with a bunch of personal injury law firms, right? And we're managing Litify and their case management software and doing marketing and social media management. We got a concrete manufacturer in Nebraska that two of our staff are certified in project management and managing concrete projects for them from the Philippines. But I allowed us to be very diversified because I didn't want to wake up with another COVID that would, wipe out a certain industry if I put all my eggs in one basket. So honestly, because of the organizations and where I was speaking, and I spent $0 on marketing. That was all word of mouth, right? And it's just other business owners. It's kind of like today, like somebody finds a cool tool or new resource, like entrepreneurs love sharing it. And people were sharing, hey, this guy, Brad, is like finally cracked the code on this offshore staffing thing. Like I got a great person. They do great work. They document my processes, right? They've got redundancy. And so word of mouth kind of drove. And a lot of these mastermind groups that intentionally have people that are in different industries in them. And that's what kind of launched all this breadth. Now, that being said, I don't want to continue down that path. Today, it allows me to go to bed at night, us being very diversified. But as we started looking at the work we're doing and the industries we're in, we are choosing some to kind of proactively go deeper in, but we will still take clients from any industry, as we move forward.
Thank you for that. You commented on the power of word of mouth and speaking. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper on that because one of the things all new business owners struggle with is how do you get your name out there? How do you get word of mouth? So you mentioned some of your mastermind groups where you maybe got opportunities. Are there other things that you used from a marketing perspective to get the word out to what you were building?
Yeah, I believe heavily in content and education, right? Just like the conversation that you and I are having, right now. And now so more than ever with AI, it's wildly important to bring authenticity and, the old phrase of know, like, and trust is more critical, than ever. And so for me, I've just, going back to my tutoring business in high school, right? I've always, and my wife actually, was actually an educator for 13 years. And my retirement, I may go teach third or fourth grade at the local
Mm.
school because I love my personal mission statement is to live a disciplined life of creation, connection, and learning to help myself and others realize our full potential, which is a bit of a mouthful, but a little reflective of who I am. But uh, it's about educating and putting educational value, out there. So I highly recommend with everyone when it comes to putting my name out. And there's so many places now. Like you don't have to get, booked to go speak on stage at a massive conference. It's just, especially with Claude and Gemini and everything kind of at your fingertips, is really taking, what and you take all of the negative stigmas of whatever your industry is, right? What are the negative stigmas people have of attorneys or marketing agencies? Or for me, goodness, there's plenty of them when it comes to offshoring. What about competency? What about language? What about time zones, right? Um, and just created content, just addressing those questions, what I call DFCs, doubt, fears, and concerns. So, it's a great place to start is just educating people about the typical perceptions around sort of your industry and across all channels. I mean, we're just posting consistently, and that's a lot of what we do with some of our clients is just helping get content, getting it curated, and just putting it out there consistently. So you're creating visibility. Because when I speak on this, I have two circles. One of them is what I call the nurture wheel, and one is called life and business events wheel. And if you can earn the right to be on someone's nurture wheel, right? You can earn the right to be in their LinkedIn feeds and their Facebook feeds and your newsletter with value, educational value, not just pitching. There will be a life and business event, right? Where they will need you, right? Very similar to your business. Somebody may not need an attorney right now or advisory, but it's going to come at some point. And
Mm-hmm.
if you've earned the right to stay on that nurture wheel, we had a guy, I haven't talked to the guy in 10 years. I didn't even know he knew what I was doing. And all of a sudden, he shows up on my calendar. His name's Adam. He said, "Yeah, Brad, I just became the CEO of this, pharmacy in the Midwest, and we need to hire 5 people in offshore." I'm like, "Man, I haven't seen your name or anything anywhere." Because he hadn't commented on a thing or liked a thing, but he was watching, right? It's the dark social, right? And people get hung up on comments and all of that and likes. He read my whole life story back to me. He had been watching everything over the last 10 years on all my social world. I had not seen him anywhere, but I was top of mind. I'd earned the right to stay in his channels and was there when that business event came for him, being that CEO. So I think whether you're comfortable with it or not, you got to figure out a way to get content out there, if it's to make an AI clone of yourself or what it may be. But it's a more critical way than ever than most traditional cold paths.
Yeah, no, I think that's some great pointers for folks to think about. I am curious in the more tactical stuff of your day to day business. It seems like there are two things when you're dealing with outsourcing. It's one, as a small business owner, entrepreneur, what are the markers for when it's time to think about outsourced talent? And number two, what are the most common concerns, if at all, you hear about doing it overseas as opposed to hiring someone stateside?
I mean, it all depends on how you look at expense versus investment in your business, right? And I'll make the argument that I mean, and whether it's through us or whether through, and there's tons of great channels to go to get VAs and outsourcing, and I've got some tips I'll share with everyone that regardless of the path that I would kind of keep in mind. But at the end of the day, this is one of the biggest values I remember in one of my freshman professors is looking at everything through the lens of opportunity cost, right? So whether you're a business doing, $100,000 a year just getting started, or you're doing, 100 million, right? If you value the time that you can do as the owner, right? If you're in super early stage and you look at what's the value of that time of me sitting up until 2 a.m., not only value of my time, but my energy, my sanity, the impact it may be having on my family or otherwise, of me staying up till 2 a.m., futzing around with LinkedIn or on my WordPress site or whatever else, right? Or versus, okay, if I can get a virtual assistant, part-time, full-time, that can kind of take on those things. And I spend my time in my genius zone, right? Which is going and closing more business. And the average client is worth X amount, right? It doesn't take long to justify an ROI. And so for me, early on, I don't really even use the word expense in our business. Like literally everything from a pencil to paying $3,000 a month for HubSpot, everything's an investment and everything should have an ROI. So I would say, first of all, people have to have that mindset. That book E Myth kind of outlines it
Yeah.
as do you have a business or do you have a job when you kind of start growing? And beyond that mindset, it's really looking at, and we have this 2-question exercise that we've done since the very beginning. Super simple and intuitive, but it's just simply, what are you doing that you know isn't the best use of your time or your highest value? And then how many hours per month are you spending on it? And I encourage people to really put a pencil to it, right? Because people start that process and they're like, yeah, I have to spend some time chasing down receivables and I got to spend some time like, editing my videos or, or chasing down, but you put a pencil to it, people are blown away every time we've done this times, right? Like they're spending 14 hours a month, right, chasing down receivables for early clients. And then the second question is, what do you want to be doing that you think you should be doing that you're not due to time, money, or knowledge, right? Like I'd love to be posting consistently on LinkedIn, right? I'd love to be, reaching out and engaging with prospects via, LinkedIn or getting testimonial videos done or what have you. And so if people will just take time to answer those 2 questions and really see how much it adds up to, then you get somebody who can take that off your plate. And as long as you're now spending time on the real high value activities, right, that's the time, right? As soon as you're willing to make that mindset shift and engage. And I've seen it happen over and over and over again, for businesses, even like, oh, I'm too small for that. That's too expensive. No, there's never anything too expensive. Like it drives me nuts when marketing agencies are like, what's your budget for pay-per-click? It's infinite. As long as there's ROI, right? I will spend incrementally until there's not, right? There is no budget for any of it. It's a matter of what revenue am I gaining or efficiency I'm gaining that can justify it from an ROI perspective.
Yeah, I think that some of the ways that it's been articulated to me is if you have the right mindset for the right opportunity, you'll figure out how to find the money, right? So if it's a marketing firm and it's a really good investment and you can see the ROI and you're getting new customer flow, you'll figure out a way. The kind of the non-growth mindset is like, oh, that's just so expensive. I just don't want to, spend that kind of money. But to me, it's like if you place your bets in the right places, that money comes back to you, whether it be in your time, right? How you're spending your time and being able to operate in your zone of genius. So that Gerber book never gets old because your ability to operate on your business and really stay at the big picture level and not getting, I would say, whenever I get involved with technology, I always hit a point of friction where I'm like, why am I here? And let me go get my guy who helps me to do that stuff because I have no business being over here. That's not my zone of genius. So I just would kind of echo what you've stated there.
Yeah.
I know.
And one thing I'll say on that is anybody that's beginning and growing their business too is, one of the number one thing when I mentor, entrepreneurs, and I'm mentoring a buddy of mine from college. His son is, junior and wanting to start things. I tell everybody, start with the numbers, right?
Mm,
Don't fall in love with the idea, the concept, my chapstick idea, right? It's ultimately get clear on the economics, right? And again, now with AI at your fingertips, you don't have to be a whiz in Excel to do it. But people so often, they just want the numbers to work because they love the concept or the idea. It's just put a pencil to it. And
yeah.
because the sooner you can get clear on the economics of the business model and just do a simple little forecast, right? And separate out your variable versus your fixed expense if it's a product you're creating or what have you. And then put a line down there at the bottom that shows cash flow, right? Because cash flow is the number one oxygen item for any business. And then have not only what it is each month, but then also put a cumulative line below it and say, okay, if I turn on the crank and I can start doing this, these are my expenses. And if I can make this happen, right, then I know what my cash flow is. It helps you make much better decisions about how to allocate your time. So you don't freak out about, well, if I'm going to spend X amount on a virtual assistant or a tool or a resource, well, if my average customer is worth, $3,500 and my gross profit is 50%, that's 1,700 bucks. Okay, well, if doing this can incrementally help me get one more client, then it's paid for itself, right? So really getting clear on the economics and the financial model of your business first, and then it'll help make the decisions a lot clearer afterwards.
What are just maybe three KPIs that are on your financial dashboard in your business that you really watch the closest?
Well, for us acquisition costs, right, is a critical element that we look at, right? We know sort of what, and a precursor to that is knowing what the lifetime value, right, of our customers are. Because when you first start, it's all about cash flow, right? And you got to be able to get return quickly, depending on if you got investors and all that other stuff, right? But if you're just getting underway, It's about how quick can I get cash back in the door from what I've spent onto acquiring that customer. But then it starts looking more at lifetime value, where you've got more cash in the bank and you got a bit more breathing room. That if your acquisition cost is, $2,000 and it takes you 3 months before you make that back, uh, then it's okay because you've got some breathing room to do so, and you can play some longer play efforts. For us, one of it is just understanding what is the economic, what is the actual gross margin per client in terms of what we charge and what we make, both and very clearly separating out our fixed expense versus variable is another big thing that a lot of entrepreneurs, they just lump all their expenses together and they have no idea that they're hemorrhaging over here and this thing is subsidized over here. Is truly isolating fixed expense and breaking out gross margin. So the whole objective of any business is to leverage your fixed, keeping that fixed stable while you drive your gross profit on the expenses that go one to one. So for me, it's near term and lifetime value of clients, and knowing, therefore, I can know what is my acquisition cost and what am I willing to pay to acquire a customer. And then retention rate is tied to that lifetime value. Like, how well am I retaining my clients and driving success? And referral rate. One of the biggest indicators of how successful we are are other people telling people about what we do? Are they so excited about what Outsource Access is doing, the impact our VAs had on their business, that they're telling people about it, right? At
Mhm.
coffee or PTA meetings, or at their kid's ball game. And referrals is a big part, of what we focus on. And our employee, satisfaction. As I mentioned, we have our own magazine in the Philippines called Virtual
Yeah.
Success. And, we showcase our employees. When I go back there, I've done 150, 200 interviews with our staff and sit down and hear about their journeys and their past in our podcast studio in the Philippines. So we're very intentional about our client, our employee satisfaction, to make sure that they're happy, they feel recognized. Because you can do all the compensation you want and all the benefits and all the razor scooters in the office, right? But fundamentally, human beings just want to know they exist, that you recognize them, and they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so I still to this day write personal welcome messages to every frontline virtual assistant in the Philippines that comes on board with us. And it gives me more energy than anything. I write a message to them, ask them about their families. I share a picture of my family. They've never seen this before, right? Especially in a country like the Philippines, and the CEO's messaging me, they think it's not real. I'm like, no, it's me, and ask them questions. But just that one activity, and there was a period of time when things kind of got crazy, and I wasn't staying up with it as well. I could clearly see the cohort of employees during that period of time. We had lower retention, and everything else stayed the same because I wasn't doing that personal welcome message where they felt recognized and seen from day one from me. So that's a,
Yeah,
a
that
key element we focus on.
you cannot understate that, to be seen, heard, and valued. Because I mean, I've worked for huge companies, and everybody's like, "I want to get promoted. I want more money," and more money's important, but the glow of that, it diminishes pretty quickly. And if you're not doing meaningful work that's recognized by the folks for whom you're doing it, it gets old real fast. And then you don't retain people, and they're looking for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I love that idea. So pivoting in our little bit of time left, you have some big things happening at the end of next month. You've got a book drop. Tell us about your book and what it's about.
Sure. Yeah, I've always been doing a lot of speaking, so I've always had, I guess, a personal brand, kind of, website and content. So it's bradstevenstraining.com. And because I love educating and sharing and thought leadership, and got podcast myself, How Outsourcing AI Works for Small to Medium Business. Uh, and with Outsource Access and having a chance to be at the front lines. I mean, over the years, we've had thousands of employees. We've done 5 million hours worth of work, 85 industries, 16,000 tasks. I've got a chance to see a big cross section of, what the impact of people's shift in mindset, right, around automating and delegating, and particularly in the world of AI that we're in right now. It's more than ever essential. And it's for me, people have been asking me forever to write a book. There's all kinds of tactical guides and things I've done kind of over the years, but I wanted something that was timeless, right? And being a big fan of Jim Collins, I think all the Jim Collins stuff is relevant, and it will be relevant 300 years from now. The hedgehog concept, right? The first two, then what? The bullets before cannonballs, right? And so I wanted to have something timeless. And so I always thought automate and delegate was two kind of, contemporary or just a now, but really it's what we've been doing since the beginning of time, right? And so that's the title of the book, right? Automate and Delegate. And we're still working on the subtitle of it, but it's kind of the modern leader's guide to scaling and living in kind of what I'm calling your passion pockets, right? It's kind of another look at the concept of genius zone, but it's at the end of the day, everybody wants to wake up and our feet hit the ground, doing what we love doing. That puts a smile on our face and gives us fulfillment and joy. And for some people, that's sitting in front of a machine and coding all day long. For others, it's speaking. For others, it's selling houses, whatever it may be. And so that's the title, is Automate and Delegate. And when you look at evolution of humanity, right, we've always been trying to find ways of how do we do things more efficiently, more effectively. The question, right? What do I want to get off of my plate, and how can I find others that can help me with that are better at it? Or is there a technology or a tool, right? The wheel was a pretty good automate delegate concept, right? When we made that transition, or from horse and buggy to automobile.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's just around that framework and the timeless methodology of back to mindset. In the very beginning of the book, we talk about just you got to get clear on what your personal mission statement is. And I didn't do that till my mid-30s. I went on a retreat and did this exercise. And once I got clear on that, it gave me sort of a compass to focus on, because what are you automating and delegating for, right? Unless you're clear about what your passion pockets are and what you love. And so that kind of is the beginning journey process, and then go through the framework. And then, and we're kind of making it timeless. There's a bunch of relevant tools right now that'll change in the future. So in the book, actually, we're pointing digitally to a bunch of the web pages that we will maintain ongoing, that we will update the latest tools on automating and delegating. And we'll have an AI agent that goes along with it, that people can put their results of that 2-question exercise of things they're wanting off their plate, things they want to be doing, and it'll put through and then give them the most relevant tools and resources. One of those things may be play more guitar in my life, right? Which is actually something I personally want to do. And there's an amazing app out there called Guitar Tabs that you can use. And there's this thing called Chord Buddy that you can put on your guitar that'll help you learn how to play guitar chords. So that's automating and delegating, right? It's how do I figure out how to do things more efficiently, whether it's growing a company or learning how to play guitar, when I speak to people in those different levels. And the more we can get more humanity kind of waking up, doing what they love every day,
Yeah,
it's adding more value to those around them, and they're more happy along the way.
I love it. So, Brad, I just got one more substantive question for you, and then we'll get you out of here. I ask all my guests this question. When you hear the phrase, do small business like a big boss, what does that mean to you?
I have to say it goes back to, a concept I was sharing earlier, in that it's mindset from the beginning. It's when I think of that, and again, I failed at this and horribly in the beginning as well, but it was like a treat and have you the mindset of a big business, right? I mean, I literally have a sticky note here, right, that says 10x SOPs. So that means always think about things 10x from now, right? Don't build it for the next 5 minutes, build it for scale, kind of going forward. But even though it may feel premature to do the numbers and economics, but do that, right? Just like big companies do, understand what the economics and the financial model is of the business. And early on, think through the lens of opportunity cost, right? What is it costing me as the owner? If I'm the main driver of revenue, what is my time and my energy worth, right? Once I know the economics of what a customer's worth and what that is, so that I can keep myself in that place as much as possible. And don't be afraid to spend on the things you need to spend on to let you be there, because you'll be in this constant stagnation of, well, I don't want to spend. I'm going to keep doing it myself. And then, if you're young and single like I was when I started my business, and you got capacity around that, then hey, you got a little bit more room. But if you're midlife, starting a business and going down with a family with children, and for me, I'm about to be walking out here coaching baseball and softball here in a couple of hours as well. You've got to be more protective of your time than ever. And so really look at that lens. And I'm not saying be reckless, but make calculated investments in everything early on, right? Whether it's investing in an AI tool or a product, or investing in a conference that you go to, and really leverage your relationships. Another great book is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And usually there's a who solution in your life versus a how. And a great tactical tool I'll share with everybody is one called Mesh. It used to be called Clay, but it actually just rebranded called Mesh. And I would tell anybody that's starting a business, right? get real clear on your who ecosystem, because it's amazing how many people we've met through our lives, right? That have some kind of connection to us, a resource or maybe an introduction that we need. And so this tool Mesh, and I have no connection with it, but you go into it and you can actually sync it to your cell phone. It'll suck in all your contacts from your phone. It'll pull in all your contacts from LinkedIn. You can connect it to your email. It'll pull all your contacts there. It'll centralize, basically be a centralized digital black book of all your relationships in one place, and it'll help them fill in the gaps. And then it has a built-in AI tool that you can go and ask it, hey, who do I know who owns cigar stores in, St. Louis, right? And it'll mine your entire ecosystem of relationships and tell you who those are. I was just in it earlier saying who in my ecosystem are business coaches and consultants, right? Because those are a lot of the partners we work with that refer us a lot of business. Mined my database and came out with 35 people. I'm like, man, I forgot that's what he does. I haven't talked to him in 7 years. We met on a golf course and happened to be paired together. And I got his phone number in my phone and I hadn't even looked at, but he got pulled in, updated his information and made it relevant. So I know it's lots of things, but that's a part of, I'm going back and early on, how can you do things cost effectively and efficiently? And your relationship and your network are a key part of that too.
Excellent. Brad, where, I know you're in a lot of places doing a lot of things, but what are the best spots for people to find you?
Well, we'll drop the links and all the show notes stuff, and I'll share with everybody. If anybody that's listening, if you shoot an email to just tools, TOOLS, tools at outsourceaccess.com, and just put boss in the subject line. You don't have to write a message or anything at all. Just do that. You can imagine I'll have a VA, and we'll send you a whole bunch of tools and resources that I mentioned from this podcast. So just tools at outsourceaccess.com and put boss in the subject line. We'll know where it came from. And we'll send you that 2-question exercise. We'll send you a link to our podcast, just a bunch of educational content that could be helpful. But outsourceaccess.com, on LinkedIn, if you look me up at Brad Stevens, the former Celtics coach. I'm always never going to be the front page of Google.
Tongue not to say that, but and then he became the GM. So
exactly, I'll never be front page of Google from that. But yeah, Brad Stevens 444 or 44 is my actual profile on LinkedIn, and Instagram and Facebook, and I find on there. And yeah, we're pushing out tons of educational content and engagement there. And happy to help and provide resources. And as a part of that resource we'll send you that 2-question exercise guide that you can take. So anybody here, whether you use AI or software or get a virtual assistant, it all starts with getting clear about what's consuming your time, what needs to come off your plate, what are the things you want to be getting to. And so if you send an email to that, we'll send you the 2-question exercise guide, a video of me walking you through how to do that. And it includes over 700 tasks that we found recurring among our clients, organized by marketing, sales, operations, admin, that's in that document as well. So you can kind of use it for reference to kind of help you begin the journey on figuring out how you're going to automate and delegate and kind of redefine how you scale.
Awesome. Brad, you've been so wonderful with your time and your gems, and just really thoroughly appreciate the conversation and also the added value that you've offered to the audience. I hope you all really take advantage of this very generous offer. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for putting this message out and supporting the small and business community. That's a passion area for me, and hopefully we'll continue to inspire the next generations to continue leading the torch ahead.
Awesome. Well, bosses, that's all we got for you today. Please remember to like, to rate, follow, subscribe, all the things, because if you do that, it helps this podcast grow and gets the message out for our small and upcoming businesses and entrepreneurs. And just remember, you can build that dream messy, you can build it scared, but please, whatever you do, just don't build it small. See you next time.